Hi, my name is David Fraccaro. I'm a United Church of Christ pastor here in Chicago, and I help coordinate national visitation programs to immigrant detention centers across the country. I grew up in a small town called Paradise. It was on the Indiana-Kentucky border, and I actually went to school in Paradise. And there wasn't a whole lot of diversity growing up, ironically enough, in Paradise. So you can imagine what a shock it was to me when I moved to the most diverse neighborhood in the entire world, Queens, New York, in the spring of 2000. And when I got there, I felt quite a bit like a stranger. I was all of a sudden in the minority. There were so many people from different nationalities and cultures. And I remember walking around Queens a lot with my head down, kind of feeling like a stranger there. And shortly after I arrived in Queens, 9/11 happened. And like everyone, I felt like I had got punched in the stomach. I felt a great deal of both sadness and anger. I remember that night I went to my favorite Irish pub in Queens, and a lot of my friends and I got together and for comfort and to kind of express our sadness. And pretty quickly it turned to anger. And even hatred. A lot of the folks in the bar started saying things like, those damn Muslims. We need to kick all immigrants out of this country. They're no good for this country. And I didn't really say anything to them. And not only did I not say anything, if you want me to be honest, there was a part of me that felt the same way. And so I went somewhere that I hadn't been in about 5 years. I went to church, the Riverside Church in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And that Sunday, the pastor told the story of the Good Samaritan story. A lot of people know the Good Samaritan story from the Christian tradition. And Jesus is asked by a lawyer, Jesus first says, the two most important commandments are to love your God with all your heart, your mind, and your body, and your soul. And the second most important one is to love your neighbor as yourself. And the lawyer says to Jesus, well, who's my neighbor? And Jesus does what he does best, and he tells a parable, the story of the Good Samaritan, a Jewish man who was robbed and beaten down a very dangerous road. And two of his own fellow Jews, a priest and a Levite, just walked on past, perhaps not willing to risk their own safety by helping this man. And it was a third man, a Samaritan person, who came along, took care of the man, risked his own safety, made sure all his wounds were taken care of and his bills paid for at a hotel. And I thought to myself, well, that's a good story, but I've kind of heard that before. But what the pastor said next, the fact that Jews and Samaritans hated each other, they were to each other the hated foreigners, that completely transformed me. It transformed my way of thinking, how am I going to be a responsible Christian? How am I really going to call myself Christian in relating to other people who are immigrants, who are different from me in terms of their religion or their nationality? And that relationship with that church ended up providing me with the opportunity to visit detained immigrants and asylum seekers from all over the world, held inside of very difficult, deplorable conditions inside of detention centers. There was one just within a stone's throw from the Statue of Liberty called the Elizabeth Detention Center that I ended up visiting weekly for the next about 8 years. And I met people from all over the world, Tibetan Buddhist mothers fleeing Chinese religious persecution, Muslim men and women fleeing war in West Africa, a young Colombian woman who ended up being particularly special to me, who fled guerrilla military activity in Colombia. And it was not her language, not her culture. She was dressed in a prison uniform despite not having done any criminal activity, just somebody who wanted to come for freedom and safety, the kind of promise that the Statue of Liberty suggested. And instead, she sat inside a detention center for about a year without once going outside, without having a lot of her health care needs taken care of, and halfway through, to make more room for other new detainees coming in, she was transferred to a local jail where she lived amongst the local jail population. And I saw her turn, this 19-year-old girl, one of the world's most vulnerable people, I saw her turn from despite those conditions, a bright, kind, hopeful young woman to take on the stature of kind of a hardened criminal. And that broke my heart. And yet, despite that transformation, there were still some of the most resilient, beautiful qualities of Claudia that came out. And I remember about a year and a half into her detention, I received a gift one Valentine's Day, and it came in this box, ironically enough, with stamps of the Statue of Liberty on it. And I had no idea what was going to be in this box, and was surprised even that she had the money to afford the stamps to send me something. And I opened up the box, and inside was a beautiful bouquet of these colorful, delicate, beautiful paper flowers. And this kind of delicacy and beauty and color came out of some of the darkest places that you can find in the United States, in these detention centers. And I was so moved by the resilience and the character of this young woman to create something this beautiful and to give it as a gift to me. So as much as I might have brought comfort to a lot of the people I visited in detention, they transformed my life. And the fact is, I wouldn't be a Christian minister today if it wasn't for my immigrant brothers and sisters from Tibet, from West Africa, and from Colombia. So my New Year's resolution is really to, one, get about 100 new people into detention centers so they themselves can see some of the darker sides of America's immigration policy, but bring hope and compassion to the lives of those inside of detention. And two, to start to do at least 5 congregational exchanges between new immigrant churches and existing congregations that really need to meet one another. I've found that whenever you're in relationship to somebody that's of a different culture, different religion, a new immigrant, your life can be transformed like it has mine. So that's my New Year's resolution.